Please put your hands together for Muirrieyah de la O. It's cold here in Wisconsin, but we're here to warm you up with another great story from one of our story slams. On today's video, we're going to be hearing from Muirrieyah de la O from the Breaking Point Story Slam.
I don't know what that is. I went to Catholic school, by the way. I had a Catholic mother. I don't know what Akashic records are. All I can think of is like two things. Like one, the high school guy that I had a crush on, his name was Akash. And two, the cereal Kashi. Like that's what's in my brain.
I'm not joking. It's cold outside. You know, I don't know where you are and where you're watching this from, but here in Wisconsin during the winter, it gets cold and there's lots of snow, and it sucks. I hate it. I really hate it. You know, one year we had, I think without the wind chill, and this is in recent memory, without the wind chill, I believe it was negative 30 degrees, and with the wind chill, it felt like negative 50. That is death. I don't understand the people who settled here. The English and the people who came here, you know, they started from the East Coast and migrated west and did atrocious things to people to take over the land, and that's a whole nother story. But the people who stopped in Wisconsin and said, yep, this is it. This horrible, frigid grossness, this is where we want to live. I don't get it. But anyway, I hope you're well. I hope that your winter is not as cold as mine. On today's video, we're going to have a wonderful story from Muirrieyah de la O. And Muirrieyah is somebody who's been at Story Slam for a number of years now and has told many stories. And she starts this story by saying, no, this is not another breakup story, but it kind of is another breakup story. She's told a lot over the years, and honestly, they have mostly been about breakups. And but she did a great job tonight, or on this night. It's not tonight. She did a great job at Story Slam Breaking Point, and she's telling a story about a friend and her mom's unique gift. And it's very interesting. You'll hear my true feelings about this unique gift when I get up after Muirrieyah and kind of share a little bit. All right, so that's enough from me. Again, if you want to help us grow, you can visit patreon.com/Madison Storyslam. That's a place where you can help financially support what we're doing. Means a lot. We put in a lot of effort for this and a lot of time, and your appreciation being shown that way helps us, pay for some of the stuff that we want to do with Story Slam. It might help me pay rent on my condo a little bit every now and then when money's tight, but mostly it just goes into Story Slam. So, without further ado, what is that? I gotta use a different line now. Here's Muirrieyah.
Thank you. So on April 10th, 2017, it was, I would be lying if I said it was one day, but it was definitely one of multiple days in my life where I had, in fact, reached a breaking point. I had just had a breakup, and no, this is not another breakup story, because I tell a lot of those, I know that, I am well aware. This is about what happens after. So I was really pretty depressed, and I was best friends with this girl at the time, who she always mentioned really casually, my mom does a thing, my mom can do this one thing. And I kind of took it with a grain of salt because she didn't bring it up all the time, but it was just something that when she would say it, it would just kind of roll off her tongue like it was the most natural thing in the world. And for some reason, I never felt inclined to ask her in great detail about it until after this breakup. I was like, what are you always talking about that your mom does? Like something about birthdays? And she's like, yeah, well, my mom has this thing that she can do where, like, if you give her your birthday and your full name, your full birth name, like, she can tell you about yourself. Like, she can tell you who you are. And I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, and she can do it for other people too. Like, she can do it for if there's someone that you're in love with or someone who's, like, really special to you in your life. Like, if you tell her that information, just that information, and you don't tell her anything else, like, she can tell you who they are. And in my head, I was always thinking, like, what does that even mean? My friend wasn't, God bless her. She wasn't the most eloquent person, and that's not to say she was dumb, because she was a couple years younger than me, but she'd gone to like 12 different high schools because she was in the foster system. She survived horrible trauma and sexual abuse from a really young age. So she went to like 12 different high schools, and she still graduated a year early. So the girl was not an idiot, but she just wasn't exactly a wordsmith. So finally I reached this breaking point, and I was like, okay, I want to talk to your mom, because her mom they had been estranged for various points, but her mom was back in town because the older daughter had a baby, so she wanted to see her grandchild. So it just so happened the mom was in town, and she tells me, yeah, she wants to meet you too. So we set up this time, and it's Monday, April 10th of 2017, and I go over to my best friend's sister's apartment, and because that's where she is, and the baby's there. And she has me meet her, and right away when I meet her mom, I'm a little put off, just to be superficial for a moment, because I see her mom. She was white, by the way, so her mom was white, and her mom was wearing this like kind of head wrap thing, which I gotta tell you, my whole life, especially living in Madison, when I see Caucasian people wearing headgear that is not of their own ethnic background, I kind of look at it a little bit skeptical. I'm like, what are you trying to do there? And especially like in this area, we see a friggin' poster for like Fête de Marquette. You know what I'm talking about. Like, certain time of year, Madison festival season, you see a lot of that going around. So I noticed that right away, and in my head, I'm like, okay, just reserve judgment. And her mom is, I'm so glad to meet you, Muirrieyah. I've been hearing about you for years and whatever. Like, we need to find a quiet room to do this. So the older sister had taken her infant and gone out somewhere. So we went into the baby's room, the new baby nursery, and she's like, I just need to get my things, and I sit in there. So I'm sitting in this empty baby nursery, like in the rocking chair, and just waiting for her to come in, which is a really awkward feeling, like I'm in a weird waiting room. So finally she comes in, and she's still got that scarf on, and she's got this little like, it's not even a device because it wasn't electronic, but it was just this little thing. It looked like a piece of jewelry, which I'm obviously quite familiar with. But I don't ask questions. I'm just gonna roll with it, let her do her thing. So she's got it's this skinny gold chain, and there's these two little, tiny little balls on the end of each one, like almost like shrunken marbles, like marbles for like, not to borrow a quote from Zoolander, but like marbles for ants. Just like, they're literally just so tiny I could barely see them, and one is milky white and one is like the color of Mars. So she's got this, and she asks me to tell her my birth name and my birthday, so I do that. And then she tells me, is there anybody that you would like to ask me about? And I know what she's getting at, so I'm like, okay, there's no point in being coy. And at this point, my friend comes in, and she just sits down, she goes, pretend I'm not even here. And I'm fine with her hearing, because she's my best friend. It's nothing she hasn't probably heard before. So she sits down, and she's listening, and I say, yeah, there is this guy that's from my past. I'm not going to say his name. But I said it to her, that was enough. So I give her his name and his birthday, and she closes her eyes, and she starts spinning this chain that she has with the two things attached to it, and it's spinning like around like this. And she's just kind of like meditating for a minute, is the best word that I can think of to do it. And she's nodding her head, and she goes, okay. So I'm going to tell you this. And she tells me, I'm looking into your Akashic records. And I'm like, what the hell is that? I don't know what that is. I went to Catholic school, by the way. I had a Catholic mother. I don't know what Akashic records are. All I can think of is like two things. Like, one, the high school guy that I had a crush on, his name was Akash. And two, the cereal Kashi. Like, that's what's in my brain, because that's what it sounds like. And again, this is a white woman, so I'm like, what does this have to do with her? But she's like, I'm looking into this, and it tells me that you and blank, this boy that I mentioned, you are from the same soul set. And I go, excuse me? And she's like, you were in a soul set, and it was actually a soul set of 3. There's one other person. And I'm like, well, who's the other person? And she goes, I don't have their name, but it's a woman, it's another woman, and she is not in this part of the world. I'm getting that she is in India, so you've never met her, you may never meet her, I don't know. And again, these are words I've never heard, so I asked her, like, what do you mean soul set? And she's like, well, you were born in the same soul set. It's basically like your souls are triplets. and you were from something, I can't remember the word she used, for the love of God, because I tried to look it up later. I tried to Google it later. She tells me, you are from something or other, universe 7. And I said, what? And she goes, it's the one universe that wasn't affected by the fall. And for any of you who didn't go to Catholic school or don't have any theological background, the fall is basically referring to the devil when he was one of the angels and he wanted to be higher than God, so he fell down and was cast out. And she said, yeah, this is the universe, there's a universe that wasn't affected by that. And I'm speechless, like I'm just sitting there absorbing all of this. And she's like, that's where you're from, and that's why you always feel so connected to him. And she tells me, like, this is not your first lifetime, this is not your only lifetime. The reason that you two feel so connected is because you've always been together in some form in your different lifetimes. Like, and I'm going, well, how do you mean? Like, what is that? Were we married? And she's like, you've been married, you've been his mother, he's been your father. She's pulling it all out. And I'm like, uh-huh. And I'm like, okay, so let me just ask you, he's with someone else now. And, I've just never been able to get over that. And she's like, okay, well, I'm going to need her name. So I go, okay. I give her that person's name and that person's date of birth. And she spins again. And she tells me, oh, okay. And she's like nodding, like she's literally getting this information transmitted to her from outer space or something. And she's nodding. She's like, okay, I see what this is. And I'm like, well, tell me. And she goes, well, oh, this is perfect for him. Like he loves this because, and I'm like, why do you say that? And because I told her, I was like, this person is really unhealthy for him. Like they're doing all these things that he's not supposed to be doing. He's around a really bad crowd, at least as far as she goes, like this is not good. And she's like, yeah, but he likes that. Like it doesn't matter if they're doing things that he's not supposed to do. He wants to be around it. He wants to see it, etc. She tells me he's cheated on her, all of this. Gives me all this information, and she tells, so I ask her, I say, well, do you think that we're gonna ever be together? And I have to say, in this lifetime, because I want to specify. In her case, you got to specify. Apparently, if I've lived 45 lifetimes or whatever, like I want to know. And she says, I don't think that you will. I don't think that it doesn't appear that that's gonna happen. And I'm like, well, at this point, I'm frustrated because I was already really depressed. I'm like, well, what's the deal? Like, does she, does this happen to everybody? And my friend chimes in, no, I get to be with my soulmate in this lifetime. Everything's going to be fine. So, we say our goodbyes and everything. I don't have much to say after that. And when I wake up the next morning, I just feel completely drained of energy. Like I feel like I'm empty. I literally feel like the life has been sucked out of me. And I've never felt exactly that empty before. And I remember reading in a book when I was younger about a girl it was a supernatural book, and she had come across with some really like demonic beings. And the next day she couldn't get out of bed. She literally just couldn't get out. She was like, I feel like my life is worthless. And that's exactly how I felt. And my friend called me up. She said, is there anything I can do? And in my head I'm thinking, yeah, you've got your soulmate, you're fine. But basically, to kind of sum it all up, like, I was always told to stay away from stuff like that. And a lot of people think that's a joke, because there's a lot of funny shit that happens when I tell that story. It's funny. But I was always taught to stay away from things like that. I know a lot of people who are involved in, like, readings and clearings, and, like, that's their prerogative. Like, everybody can do. It's a free country, for sure. I'm not here to stop anybody, but I'm not going back to that. It didn't work for me. Like I said, I've never felt so drained and soul-sucked. So anybody who wants to do those readings and clearings, y'all can do whatever you want, but please keep it away from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Muirrieyah. Anybody here a fan of Third Rock from the Sun? When she was telling about the lady who, spun and was getting stuff, I just was thinking, incoming message from the big giant head. Anybody think it's a little curious that anybody who's had a previous life reading has never been told, oh, you were the shit digger for the circus? Like, it's always, you come from a universe where the fall and sin, you're perfect. It's always like you were Cleopatra. You were never Cleopatra's, porta potty shovel outer. It's so funny to me. Like, because if previous lives are real, you had to at one point be the shit digger. Like, you just had to. You're perfect. I love it. It's bullshit. I'm sorry. If you think it's real, more power to you. I think it's bullshit.